If you want to travel to the most breathtaking, high-altitude, and spiritually fierce wilderness on planet Earth, you must travel to the absolute, forbidden heart of the eastern Himalayas. You must leave the crowded, noisy, paved modern world entirely behind and pull yourself up into the towering, ancient, fenceless mountain kingdom of Bhutan. Imagine stepping off a small, twin-propeller airplane onto a narrow, terrifying asphalt runway nestled deep within a steep green valley. To land here, the metal plane must weave violently between towering, jagged mountain peaks, flying mere inches from the dark green pine trees on the hillsides. It is widely considered one of the most dangerous, adrenaline-fueled airport landings in the entire world. You look around. There are absolutely no towering glass skyscrapers reflecting the sun. There are no massive, multi-lane highways choked with running cars. There are no bright neon advertisements flashing in your eyes. In the capital city of Thimphu, there is not a single traffic light. Instead, a local policeman stands inside a small, colorful wooden pavilion in the middle of the street, directing the slow flow of traffic with elegant, rhythmic hand movements. There is only a massive, terrifying, endless, completely suffocating ocean of towering, jagged, snow-capped mountains piercing directly into a blindingly bright, impossibly deep, dark blue sky. These massive granite peaks stretch endlessly toward the horizon, locked in a pristine, thin-aired, and violently harsh wilderness under a punishing, blindingly bright golden sun. The air itself feels incredibly thin, sharp, and absolutely pure. You can physically feel the intense, terrifying power of the low oxygen pressing heavily against your lungs, instantly making your head spin and your heart beat wildly inside your chest. Every single time you take a deep breath, your lungs are filled with the intense, rich, overpowering scent of burning blue pine wood, steaming red rice, and the thick, intoxicating, heavy smoke of burning ancient juniper incense. The silence here is absolute, crushing, and immense. The concept of modern noise is almost completely swallowed by the sheer scale of the mountains. The deep, terrifying silence is only broken by the sharp, piercing, screaming howl of the freezing, razor-sharp wind sweeping rapidly across the high, fenceless valleys. Beneath the wind, you hear the deep, heavy, rhythmic, terrifying thumping of giant, prehistoric-looking black yaks. Massive, heavily haired, horned beasts, stepping heavily upon the sharp, gray rocks. You hear the sharp, high-pitched whinny of wild horses echoing across the empty valley, and the violent snapping of colorful red, blue, green, and yellow prayer flags violently whipping in the freezing wind. Welcome to the land of the Thunder Dragon. Welcome to Bhutan, the absolute, undisputed king of the high valleys, the secret kingdom of happiness, and one of the most culturally isolated, dangerous, and deeply misunderstood human territories on our planet. For adventurous, wealthy foreign tourists, the extreme safe edges of this territory offer a highly restricted, expensive ride in a clean, quiet SUV, to take quick digital photographs of a beautiful white monastery or to point a camera at a slow, heavy brown yak chewing grass in a green valley. They sleep in heated wooden lodges and drink hot, sweet butter tea. But for the isolated, ancient, resilient indigenous tribes and farmers who actually live deep in the empty, freezing, terrifying center of this high-altitude mountain world, the proud custodians of the high valleys, these mountains are not a beautiful vacation spot. It is not a place to visit. It is their entire universe. It is their grocery store, their pharmacy, their armory, their fortress, and their religion. And it operates under a strict, terrifying, and absolutely unforgiving set of extreme survival rules. Out here, a single mistake does not mean a trip to the hospital. A single mistake means absolute, certain death in the freezing dark mountains or the raging white glacial rivers. Rule number 1 of the High Kingdom: you must survive the deadly, suffocating thin air and the bone-crushing cold. The high-altitude valleys of Laya and Lunana are not places of gentle, peaceful, relaxing walks. They are a deadly, merciless, terrifying trap. The rocky ground sits staggering at 4,000 to 5,000 meters above sea level, where the oxygen levels are terrifyingly, dangerously low. It is blasted by violent, rapidly moving freezing winds and sits under a blazing golden sun. Because of this terrifying, unavoidable daily reality, human survival required an absolute, jaw-dropping, magnificent mastery of ancient architecture and community. You do not conquer this land by building towering concrete walls. You flow with it. The people here do not build massive, modern glass mansions. By national law, every single building in Bhutan must be constructed according to strict traditional architectural rules. If you walk into a traditional Bhutanese valley, you will see a breathtaking piece of ancient, organic architecture. They build massive, fortress-like houses with thick, whitewashed mud brick walls and dark, intricately hand-painted wooden window frames. The most magnificent of these structures are the dzongs. These are giant, towering fortress monasteries built of heavy white stone and dark timber, sitting majestically on the confluences of rushing rivers and on the edges of sheer cliffs. They have shimmering, massive golden roofs that reflect the bright sun across the valleys. Historically, these giant, white fortresses protected the valleys from the violent, bloody invasions of Tibetan warriors. Today, they serve as the administrative and spiritual heart of every district where red-robed monks chant prayers and local leaders govern the land. But the ultimate architectural miracle of Bhutan sits clinging impossibly to the sheer face of a black granite cliff. It is the Tiger's Nest Monastery, Paro Taktsang. This beautiful, white-walled sanctuary sits suspended at a dizzying 900 meters above the green valley floor. To reach this sacred place, you must hike for hours up a steep, narrow dirt trail, weaving through thick forests of dark green pine trees covered in hanging gray moss. A single misstep on the wet, slippery rock means a terrifying, lethal drop into the abyss below. A rugged, wind-burned indigenous builder grabs a thick, heavy block of sun-baked mud. He begins to stack massive, thick, incredibly heavy walls. He builds with absolutely no modern electric heating, no thick fiberglass insulation, and no heavy metal radiators. He uses only the earth, thick wooden poplar beams, and the blinding heat of the sun. He wears incredibly heavy traditional clothing. By national decree, every Bhutanese citizen must wear their traditional national dress in public. The men wear the go, a heavy, knee-length robe made of thick, striped wool or cotton, folded and wrapped tightly around the waist with a woven belt, creating a massive, pouch-like pocket in the front where they carry everything from wooden bowls to modern smartphones. The women wear the kira, an incredibly elegant, long, ankle-length dress made of beautifully hand-woven silk with complex geometric patterns in bright yellows, deep reds, and glowing blues. This fierce, brilliant, ancient clothing is designed to protect their bodies from the biting cold, confuse the freezing wind, and trap the vital, radiating body heat in the chaotic, freezing background of the high mountains. Inside the thick, mud-brick house, 4,000 meters above the sea, they do the impossible. They survive the 8-month-long, terrifying, suffocating, pitch-black winter where the temperature violently plummets to a deadly -20 degrees Celsius. They build a bright, roaring orange fire directly inside a heavy black iron stove in the center of the room. But they do not burn coal. They burn dry, fallen blue pine wood. The thick heat from the burning wood acts as a massive radiator, keeping their sleeping bodies safe from the lethal, freezing black night outside. Because of their incredible, fearless ability to adapt to the most extreme freezing altitudes on Earth, these proud, ancient people are the undisputed masters of the high peaks. To survive and feed their families in this freezing, towering, rocky fortress, the indigenous people had to become the ultimate, fearless, invisible masters of the massive, hairy beasts and the incredibly thick, freezing ice. Historically, the indigenous nomad did not drive a loud, heavy metal diesel tractor. A heavy metal machine with black rubber tires would instantly freeze, its engine oil turning into solid black blocks the moment the violent, heavy Himalayan winter blizzards begin to fall. Instead, he guides a massive, silent, perfectly adapted herd of giant, heavy, black and brown yaks down the dark, twisting, dangerous, rocky valleys. He walks silently, making absolutely no sudden, startling sounds in the thin air. He does not herd with loud, explosive metal hunting rifles. He relies on silent, ancient, deadly animal husbandry. He carries massive, heavy, deeply spun wool ropes and long, sharp, hand-carved wooden staffs. He steps out of his mud brick home and moves flawlessly, silently through the freezing, slippery, white snow and the sharp, jagged gray rocks, managing the ultimate, most dangerous, and most valuable prize of the high plateau. He herds the massive, heavily muscled, terrifying, wild-looking black yak. These massive, aggressive, unpredictable yaks have incredibly thick, tough black fur, razor-sharp, curving white horns, and can violently, brutally charge a human being in seconds, crushing human bones with their massive weight. But the yak is the absolute lifeblood of the high altitude. It provides thick, dark red meat, heavy, rich white milk, and the incredibly thick, warm black wool used to weave heavy nomadic tents that withstand the screaming winter wind. But managing dangerous wild animals on the frozen peaks is only half of the extreme survival equation. To truly understand life in Bhutan, you must look at the national sport of the kingdom: archery. DR. This is not a quiet, polite, modern sport. It is a loud, chaotic, violently competitive, and deeply spiritual battlefield. In every village green, under the shadow of the white stone dzongs, rugged men in go robes gather. They stand at a distance of over 140 meters, twice the Olympic distance, staring at a tiny, narrow wooden target placed in the dirt. They use massive, traditional wooden bows carved from thick bamboo or modern, high-tech carbon fiber compound bows. A strong archer pulls back the heavy string. He aims through the wind. He releases. The bright wooden arrow flies through the air at a terrifying speed, making a sharp, high-pitched whistling sound. When the arrow hits the tiny wooden target with a loud wooden crack, the archer's teammates burst into a wild, celebratory, traditional song and dance. They wear colorful silk sashes on their hips, jumping and spinning in circles, singing ancient poems to mock their opponents and praise the gods. It is a beautiful, ancient, unbroken, and highly dangerous celebration of skill and masculinity. A single stray arrow can easily pierce a human body, requiring absolute, flawless precision, but playing archery and herding massive black beasts is only part of their daily life. The human body requires massive amounts of calories to survive the exhausting, shivering, physical labor of the freezing mountains. Agriculture, out here in the deep, frozen rocky valleys, is incredibly difficult. You cannot drive a heavy green combine harvester. You cannot plant neat, perfectly straight rows of yellow corn in freezing, dry, rocky, high-altitude dust. But the Bhutanese are proud, stubborn farmers. They have turned their vertical mountains into a masterpiece of agricultural engineering. They carve thousands of narrow, curving, flat green steps directly into the steep mountain slopes. These are the spectacular terraced fields, and they are the only country in the entire world that has banned all chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Every single grain of food grown in Bhutan is 100% organic. The true, absolute life-saving foundation of the Bhutanese diet and survival comes from a miraculous, exhausting harvest of a unique, tough crop: red rice. This unique red rice is the only grain stubborn enough to grow at these freezing altitudes, watered by the cold, rushing, crystal clear, blue glacial meltwater flowing down from the high peaks. When the farmers use their sharp sickles to chop down the massive golden rice stalks, it is a moment of pure, desperate, life-saving relief for the entire village. The men and women use heavy, sharp metal sickles attached to thick, hand-carved wooden handles to violently slice the massive, heavy, golden stalks. They thresh the grain using massive, heavy wooden poles and the weight of their giant black yaks. The local women walk into the stone mills carrying large, heavy woven bags of grain. They pound and smash the hard grain for hours, turning it into a thick, dry, heavy, rich red rice. But they do not eat this rice with mild vegetables. To survive the freezing cold, the Bhutanese eat the most fiery, burning, explosive dish on earth, amidst. This is the national dish, and it is not a side dish. It is the main course. The women take massive handfuls of incredibly hot, bright red and vibrant green chili peppers. They do not chop them for spice. They cook the whole chilies in bubbling, boiling white cheese made from fresh yak milk. They serve this steaming, fiery, bright red and green mixture over a massive mound of hot red rice. When you put a spoonful of amidst into your mouth, your tongue physically burns. Your eyes water, and your body instantly explodes into a heavy, warm sweat. It provides a massive, immediate rush of internal body heat, giving the human body the deep internal fire it needs to survive the freezing, oxygen-deprived mountain air, along with the warm, rich, dark red meat from the yak, and the incredibly thick, heavy tea called suja, which is boiled with salt and heavy yak butter. This extreme, high-fat, high-spice diet provides the massive, intense internal energy the people desperately need to endure the brutal, exhausting physical labor of navigating the endless, freezing mountains. But Bhutan is a land of extreme, violent, and terrifying contrasts. While the daytime brings blinding, continuous, bright yellow sunlight, filtering intensely through the incredibly thin, transparent air, violently burning the human skin, the nighttime is a freezing, pitch-black, terrifying void filled with unseen, hidden cold. Because of the complete lack of moisture and clouds, the absolute moment the bright sun sets behind the massive, jagged gray granite mountains, the valley plunges into terrifying, painfully dark, absolute, freezing blackness. You cannot feel your own hands in front of your face due to the biting cold. To survive the dark, dangerous, terrifying, freezing nights, the tribal families must gather closely together. They do not wander alone into the howling wind. Inside the thick mud brick houses and towering ancient fortress-like monasteries built on the edges of massive cliffs, they seek safety, warmth, and intense, profound spiritual connection. They build a bright, roaring, crackling orange fire using dry blue pine wood placed directly inside the heavy black iron stove in the center of the mudroom. They sit closely together on thick, incredibly soft, hand-woven woolen rugs placed directly on the hard, packed dirt floor. And they practice the most important, sacred, beautiful, and mind-blowing spiritual ritual of the high Himalayas: Vajrayana Buddhism. Dozens of proud, spiritually dedicated, deeply wrinkled elderly monks and young novices stand close together in a massive, ancient, dark, smoky prayer hall inside the white dzong, completely covered in brilliant, glowing, blindingly vibrant dark red and golden yellow woolen robes. They begin a deep, rhythmic, incredibly heavy, synchronized, guttural chanting. These massive, ancient, thick-walled monasteries smell intensely of burning butter lamps. The monks strike massive, heavy, hanging brass gongs and blow into incredibly long, massive, heavy copper horns that rest directly on the wooden floor. They produce mesmerizing, echoing, heavy, thundering, vibrating sounds. The incredibly deep, vibrating horn blasts and the chanting perfectly imitate the heavy, violent howling of the winter blizzards, the crashing roar of the avalanches, and the sharp, echoing calls of the high-altitude eagles. It is a slow, hypnotic, overwhelming, and breathtakingly emotional spectacle of human devotion. Listening to this deep, echoing, thumping chant physically vibrates inside their chests. It connects their human bodies from the inside out. It brings the entire isolated, freezing community together in an unbreakable, invisible, spiritual bond. They sit around the warm, glowing, flickering yellow light of thousands of tiny, burning yak butter lamps. They spin massive, heavy, glowing golden prayer wheels, sending ancient, echoing, whispered mantras into the pitch-black, freezing, howling night air. If you step outside the heavy wooden doors of the monastery and look closely at the massive, white, snow-capped peaks glowing in the moonlight, you will see a breathtaking, terrifying sight that modern city dwellers can absolutely never experience. You are closer to the stars than almost anywhere else on Earth. The dark black sky is completely, overwhelmingly suffocated by billions of bright, glowing, brilliant white and purple stars. You can clearly see the glowing, bright, thick dust of the Milky Way galaxy stretching violently across the entire universe, completely unobstructed by any city lights or pollution. It is a beautiful, ancient, unbroken, magnificent celebration of human existence, thriving and surviving in the most extreme, isolated, difficult, frozen, high-altitude corner of the world. But today, this ancient, perfect, beautiful, delicate balance is facing a massive, unnatural, entirely modern, and deeply terrifying global threat. If you travel across the vast, twisting, rocky valleys, far, far away from the quiet mud-brick villages and the chanting monks, you will suddenly hear a deafening, terrifying, massive feat of modern industrial threat slowly creeping across the fragile, high-altitude valleys. The massive, ancient, frozen glaciers that provide absolutely every single drop of drinking and farming water are actually being violently, rapidly destroyed. Due to global climate change, the massive, towering white glaciers of the high Himalayas are melting at a terrifying, catastrophic speed. This creates massive, unstable, towering glacial lakes held back only by fragile walls of loose dirt and ice. If one of these walls breaks, a catastrophic glacial lake outburst flood occurs. Millions of tons of freezing white ice, mud, and giant gray rocks violently crash down the valleys, completely destroying the ancient white dongs, burying the green terraced rice fields, and taking thousands of human lives in a matter of minutes. At the same time, the modern, industrialized world is slowly pressing against the borders of this isolated kingdom. For decades, the government of Bhutan made a radical, brilliant choice. They decided to measure their country's progress not by gross domestic product, not by green paper money, heavy factories, and concrete skyscrapers. They decided to measure progress by gross national happiness. They chose to protect their culture and their environment above all else. They are the only carbon-negative country on the entire planet. Their massive, pristine green pine forests absorb more carbon dioxide than their entire country produces. They strictly restrict foreign tourism, charging a heavy daily tax to ensure that only a small number of respectful travelers can enter their sacred valleys. But the modern, hyper-connected digital world is quietly, relentlessly leaking into the ancient, red-robed, isolated communities. Bhutan was the very last country on planet Earth to introduce television and the internet, finally allowing them in the year 1999. Today, if you walk into a remote, high-altitude valley, you will see a strange, jarring, totally bizarre visual contrast. Sitting by the warm, glowing orange-blue pine fire, surrounded by thick mud walls, a young indigenous teenager wearing a traditional heavy-go robe is also wearing modern, bright sneakers and dark black sunglasses. And in their hand, they are holding a bright, glowing, shiny digital smartphone connected to a new, fast cellular signal. They sit in the freezing high-altitude valleys, but they watch bright, fast, incredibly loud digital videos of crowded, massive concrete cities like New York, London, Tokyo, and Bangkok. They see fast, shiny metal sports cars, bright, flashing neon streetlights, massive, clean, modern shopping malls, and towering, reflective glass buildings reaching into the warm, oxygen-rich clouds. The psychological, emotional temptation to leave the harsh, freezing, oxygen-deprived, incredibly dangerous, back-breaking mountain life for the bright electric lights, the modern central heating, the easy food, and the convenience of the grey, warm, concrete city is incredibly powerful and seductive. Thousands of young indigenous boys and girls are packing their small, woven bags. They are walking out of the rocky valleys, boarding loud, smoking metal buses and heavy airplanes, and flying away from their ancestral homes. They are traveling to universities in Australia, Europe, and America, leaving their ancient, complex Dzongkha language, their towering mud-brick houses, and their dangerous, freezing nomadic traditions entirely behind, allowing them to slowly fade away. As the young youth permanently abandon the high valleys, and the threat of melting glaciers pushes closer and closer every single day. A heavy, profound, deeply painful anxiety hangs over the ancient rocky peaks. Would the massive, beautiful, gravity-defying mud-brick houses built 4,000 meters in the air eventually be completely abandoned, rotting away and collapsing back into the dry, brown dust? Would the ancient, echoing, thumping, deep-throat chanting of the red-robed monks and the spectacular, massive archery festivals completely disappear into the pages of history books, becoming nothing more than a forgotten, fading myth? It is a terrifying, deeply painful, and incredibly complex reality. But if you stop and look directly into the bright, fierce, incredibly proud, dark brown eyes of a seasoned Bhutanese farmer, standing his ground in the deep, shifting, freezing white snow, holding his heavy, hand-carved bamboo bow tight against his chest, you will see a human spirit that absolutely, stubbornly, and violently refuses to be broken. These are the descendants of the people who looked at an impenetrable, suffocating, terrifying, deadly, oxygen-starved, freezing rock labyrinth, and did not run away in fear. They decided to stay and build a vibrant, beautiful, spiritually rich, and incredibly powerful, peaceful empire. Living in Bhutan is not a soft vacation. It is a daily, exhausting exercise in profound, absolute, freezing human resilience and harmony with the earth. It is the intense, overpowering smell of burning blue pine wood, fiery imadachi, and sweet, intoxicating juniper incense. It is the deafening, beautiful, completely chaotic sound of howling, screaming mountain winds and the deep, rhythmic, chest-pounding beating of heavy brass gongs inside the white dzongs. In the modern, comfortable, low-altitude Western world, we build massive, thick concrete walls, we pave over the soft earth with hard, dead-gray asphalt, and we turn on humming electric central heating systems because we are desperately, deeply terrified of raw nature. We want to hide from the cold, the ice, and the thin air, but the incredible, fierce people of the high Himalayas do not hide. They climb the giant, frozen peaks. They herd the massive, hairy beasts. They eat the burning hot chilies. They dance under the golden roofs of the dzongs. They survive the darkest, coldest nights on the planet. Nature here is a massive, suffocating, freezing, unrelenting dictator. But the people who choose to stay, the true, ancient, wind-burned guardians of the land of the Thunder Dragon, will fiercely, violently, and proudly defend every single ancient mud brick, every drop of freezing blue glacial water, and every massive, bleeding pine tree, until their very last, defiant,